Good afternoon and welcome to the Cannabis World Congress and Business Expo live stream, where we bring you the latest and greatest in the industry every week at 4 p.m. and get you on your way to enjoying your 420. I'm Gretchen Gailey, the Chief Strategy Officer for the CWCBExpo, and every week I am talking with industry experts, influencers, and a few cannabis OGs with a focus on the burgeoning New York market. Today, I am so happy to have with us one of those true cannabis OGs, the myth, the man, the legend,
Hey,
Calvin Frye.
how you doing?
How are you doing, Calvin? And for those who don't know, Calvin is also one of our trusted advisors at CWCBE. For those who aren't as familiar with you, I know you've got quite the reputation on the West Coast, and we're building it up for you here on the East Coast. Tell us a little bit more about what you've been doing in the space forever.
Oh man, it seems when it comes to the cannabis industry, it is complete dog years for me. So you're looking at probably a 100-year-old guy when it comes to being in this industry. We started it back in I believe like 2005 with Mr. Dennis Perone and the Compassionate Use Act out here in California. And actually that was passed in 1996. So it took a good 9 years after legislation was passed for people to get brave enough to actually get into this industry. So with those guys, I mean, they were in it for all the right reasons. And that's what got me intrigued to get in it. My neighbor was dying of cancer, and he came over, told me about it. Obviously, I felt bad for him, and he was like, "But hey, I heard that there's this cannabis works, and there's a store that sells it." And I'm like, "Dude, there's no such thing as a store that sells weed. You can be nice, and you don't have to you don't have to front." He was like, "No, it really did." So he came back about a couple hours later with a actual brown bag with a little receipt thing stamped to the top, and I was like, "What? Man, you're just making that up, whatever." And he kind of did it a couple more days, and it actually turned that allowed for medical cannabis use. And then, long story short, he the cancer went into remission, and he convinced me to get in with him. It's like, "Hey man, let's go open a store together." And it took everything in me to do it. I had to promise my wife a long vacation and all these good things so she would let me do it. And we went in, and the next thing you know, we're open up, and 18 years later, here I am.
Do you think nowadays, when you see the industry and people are so concerned with the corporatization of it, do you think that so many people have just forgotten about the roots? And is that just something we need to get back to?
Yeah, as with anything, whether it's music, whether it's whatever type of entertainment, or just pioneering in general, the pioneers are always the guys that are forgotten, or the guys that you end up seeing broke and asking for handouts. And I've always hated that. And I always bring up pioneers' names every chance that I get, every show that I do, for that particular reason. And I think people need to get back to how this whole cannabis movement got started in the first place, which was on the medical side. And I believe, like Dennis Ferrone used to say, all use is medical. So even though we have the recreational going on, and that's what's getting all the popularity, I definitely think we have to get back to what got us here.
And I don't know about you, but I think when I talk to folks, and I talk to a lot of folks here in Washington who don't seem to know much, that it's the medical side that really helps people to get on board with cannabis, or that's how they're at least first introduced to it.
Yep. 100%.
So you've learned, like you said, you've been in this for 1,000 dog years, especially out on the West Coast. You guys have had this truly since, what would you say, 96 is when it all got started out there?
Yeah. The first Compassionate Use Act bill, the first thing in the country, got passed, but it took literally 8-9 years before someone was brave enough to actually do it. I mean, think of the president, during that time. I've been through Oh, four presidents. I think when I started, it was Bush, then it was like Bush, and then Obama, and then Trump, and now Biden. So I've been through four generations of it, and it's been very scary through those first couple of presidents because you just didn't know what was going. Republican president, you had Democratic president, but luckily we had the medical thing. I don't think this would have happened, and I was one of the advocates to some of my colleagues that no, don't worry about recreational. That will happen down the line. If we're not going to show little old ladies and cancer patients and AIDS patients in the front of what we're trying to do, we're all going to go to jail. This is a federal Schedule 1, thing here. So let's be smart about this. So yeah.
Well, and I know coming from the West Coast right now, everyone, no offense, stood in awe of California, like, ooh, amazing. But now looking at your market, people are like, horrible.
Right.
What
Exactly.
advice would you give to folks who are trying to build a bigger, better East Coast market, or especially like New York, that's just getting off
Yeah.
on their
Well,
start?
yeah. Ironically, I have a wonderful story about that as well. This CWCBExpo, they used to go all around the country. New York, Boston, LA. So me and Christine, she got up with me and she seen all of the work that I was doing, and I eventually started to work with her. And I used to speak at the show, so I started to go all around the country. I used to go back to Colorado before they got on board. Illinois, I was brought there by the governor to help them out. And this last couple of years before New York got on board, I was brought out by Senator Saunders, upstate New York, brought out to Albany to work with Tremaine Wright and those guys and talking to the legacy market and doing just that, telling them what to do and what not to do. And I trust me, it's documented. I was there a couple of years ago warning them of literally everything that you see that's happening in New York right now. I was there begging and pleading with them to take these things into consideration and put the legislation this way and make a few changes this way and be ready for some emergency rules if you have to, just to get the industry going. But unfortunately, some people just assume that, well, yeah, well, you guys got it wrong over here, and we're going to do it our way, and they didn't listen, and here we are.
What do you think is the biggest stumbling block in cannabis when it comes to legislating it, regulating it? Is it people are too high of taxes, or are they focused too much on trying to figure out the social equity piece, or are we not putting enough emphasis on helping entrepreneurs really understand what they're doing? Because we all know so many people who get into the space do not have traditional business backgrounds, shall we say.
Right.
Where are we falling short in getting these markets up and running?
It's definitely not one thing. One may be kind of bigger than the other, but if I just try to say it's one thing, I'd be lying. It's pretty much everything you said right there, but at different degrees. I think kind of as I look all the way back and all the way forward to where I am now, and the number of people that I've talked to and the number of stages that I've been on and everything in between, when I look at it, I think one of the biggest stumbling blocks is that the initial legislation, okay, and the initial rules and regs that go out are the number one stumbling block that weighs the biggest percentage, because they didn't listen to or didn't look and see what happened in the other states, okay? And they kind of went with the same legislation and they make the same mistakes. Then on top of that, the social equity leg of it. I back in the day when, and this may sound kind of messed up, but people understand. I'm just saying it. It's a brother. I can say this. In the beginning, I was like, wow, okay, this is actually going to work. Finally, there's going to be a market where black dudes and people of color are going to dominate, because this is cannabis that no one else is going to want to touch this market. So once this becomes legal, we're going to finally have our shot at it. And boy, was I wrong. All of these years later, and you look at the percentages of people of color that actually, and women obviously, that own these licenses, it's just like everything else in this country. So the social equity leg of things came from that, right? So they tried to right the wrong. But again, it's just like you said, if the prerequisites to being a social equity applicant is, coming from an impoverished area, possibly being in jail, or, probably everything that you can think of that would not be on a successful businessman's resume, and you assume you're going to take these licenses and just give them to those folks and just say, okay, get out there and make yourself special. That's not going to happen either. So all of these things have been intertwined with how not just New York, but Jersey and Chicago, and I mean Illinois, I'm sorry, all of these states kind of made the same mistake. So it's kind of all bumbled up in there, Gretch.
So what would then be your advice to New York, who has put such an emphasis on getting social equity applicants out there first? Because we know that they don't have the fund raised that they were hoping to raise to work with DASNY and really kind of help get the locations that they were looking for to help these folks get into. I mean, it almost seems as if New York has shot itself in the foot. And I know that they've issued lots of licenses, and, we're crossing our fingers that, these doors get open. But when we're almost 4 months in and we only got 4 dispensaries in Manhattan, that's a little scary.
That's like just sucks. Especially when I'm telling you, I was out there. We had 2 years working on this. And to be where we are now, and it's like as a pioneer, I get no fun out of saying I told you so, right? But what I think they can do, again, just look back to what happened in California. We we were the first out the gate, so we can at least use that as our excuse as to how we fumbled the ball. When we started out, they issued licenses, but they issued it's the same mistake that New York is doing. They issued the retail licenses first, right? But if you're going to issue retail licenses first, what are you going to sell if no one else, the other licenses weren't given out and the proper things were put into place so you actually have products to sell? So that was New York's biggest mistake. But when California did that, well, at least our BCC was like, okay, we screwed up. So this is what we're going to do. We have the authority, based on the language, the way that the law was written, just like New York has, to go back and introduce some emergency rules that are, 3 months, 6 months, however. I think ours was like 6 months or something, and they got extended one time. And these emergency rules just went back through the language and kind of waived some very pertinent things that you needed to get started and to get going. And that allowed for our industry to catch up. And then we did catch up, and we kind of got going there. But in our case, the cat was already out of the bag. It was too many illegal shops. It was too many licenses already opening and doing things long before one license got issued that was actually legal. And that's what I would say New York should do. You got to do the emergency rules. You see what's failing you, so make some emergency rules so that people can get out and get open, and then you'll be able to retract those rules later because they're emergency rules, and then you can follow up with your regular legislation and regulations.
So another huge problem, and I know I'm looking to you, Calvin, to fix the world. However, a huge problem in New York is the illicit market, which you guys also combat out in California. Yes. I mean, you got 1,500 illegal shops open in New York. And again, like I said, we've got 4 legal ones. Right. How do you even begin to start emptying the ocean with your teaspoon? I mean, how do you fix that?
Well, I remember I mentioned to you that Senator Saunders had guys like myself fly out to Albany to speak to people. Okay, the Tremaine Wright, she was there at one of these events. So long before any licenses got sent out, long before any of the magnitude illegal shops that you guys have in New York now opened, we had a special meeting, and we invited those same legacy guys. We brought them to Albany. We allowed no cameras, no pictures, no nothing. So you could protect the innocent, because people, hey, I'm not going to put myself out there. I don't know if I trust y'all yet. So imagine a room full of those individuals, as well as some legislative people in Albany, and a couple people just like myself. It was only like 3 speakers. I was one of them. The legacy market wasn't feeling the other 2 speakers because they were educational guys, but they were totally listening to me because I was them. I was a legacy guy for a hot moment, and then I said, okay, I'm going to trust you guys. I'm going to fill out all the paperwork. I'm going to come in. And so we talked, and it was good dialogue going back and forth between Tremaine Wright, who's the OCM chair, and me and the legacy guys. And so the meeting was very positive. People left out of it like, okay, so you guys actually look like you're actually trying to do something here. Okay. And during that time, there wasn't a whole lot of shops that opened. They were actually literally like, okay, we're going to give you guys a shot at this. But I think the OCM dropped the ball because it simply took too long for them to actually choose the people. The rules that they put in place, they were too stringent to come right out of the gate with. They chose a method that, again, looks good on paper. Sure, we're going to raise, $200 million, and we're going to have these nice shops that are ready to go. I think that was an excellent idea. But if you don't have the funds to do that, you shouldn't have even, that should have been like an alternate thing, right? You should have been able to issue the licenses out, right? And if you raise the money, then you go and you help those guys. But you should have at least issued the licenses out as soon as possible, with the ability for people to go out and search for their, locations and the things that they need to do. Every other state did that, and every other state is open and doing their thing. I understand why New York did it, but again, the people in charge just didn't really understand that they needed to get these out, that the legacy market, they put themselves on pause. And I think that's awesome. But you can't pause someone forever when that's, how they're making their income, and that's how they're doing their thing. So that's what happened. And I hope that they put some emergency rules in and just literally start issuing more licenses so people can get to going and the market can catch up.
Now, Calvin, we are quickly approaching 420. So any last minute words of advice from the West Coast to the East Coast?
Yeah, I mean, it really would be for the powers that be that are in control to simply go and look at how we got to where we are over here. Okay, we were kind of doomed from the start because we already had 2,500 illicit shops, and then you're like, okay, yeah, go be legal with no enforcement. I would say put some emergency rules in place. Definitely spend some money on enforcement to actually shut down the illegal market, or at least shut them down in a way so that they feel that they will be able to open later when you come back around. And like I said, ease those regulations and give out some damn licenses and let people get going.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Calvin Frye, Cannabis Pioneer Entrepreneur. I cannot wait to see you in June in Javits. And for everyone who's watching us today, please keep an eye on the scroll at the bottom. You can get a free 3-day pass and 20% off the Cannabis Expo using the code Calvin Frye. So put this man's name to work for you.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today on our live stream, Calvin. It's always so great to see you and talk with you. I hope everyone else will have a wonderful 420.
420, you know what time that is, and you know what you need to go do, so go do it.
Use that Calvin Frye code.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
All right. Bye-bye.